Hi, this is George Alger. Welcome to today's segment of Our Ventura TV. Today we're going to be talking about the Ventura City budget, and our guest expert is Bob Alviani, who is the CEO of VREG. Welcome, Bob, and what is VREG?
Thank you, George. VREG is a watchdog organization. We've been around since 2007, and we examine closely the city's budget and finances and try and keep an eye on it for all of us. So we attend several meetings with the city council and their committees, and we try and stay on top of what's going on.
Good. And what does VREG stand for?
It stands for Venturans for Responsible and Efficient Government. I've got a board of about 14 people who most of us have been together for that entire 13-year period.
Well done. So let's just jump right into this. But let's start off with a sort of definition of a city budget. What does that mean?
Well, a city budget is really a list of expenses for spending. It's sometimes a wish list. In some cases, it's a priority as to how the city is going to meet the demands of the citizens in the community.
Very good. And how is the Ventura City budget doing?
Well, it was doing pretty good about a year ago. And then they started working on some of their deficits that they're facing, in particular expenditures that are now zooming upward, in particular their employment benefits seem to be taking a bigger bite of their budget all the time. So about 4 months ago, they were anticipating a deficit of about 4.1 million. In April, that figure now was climbing to 7.2 as far as a deficit. And the other day I read that they were actually anticipating about a $12 million deficit. So they have to figure ways to try and solve that problem.
Okay, and Bob, if there's some context that might help us look at this, do you happen to know if this is like the largest deficit in the city's history, or if this is just part of some normal fluctuations going on over a couple decades?
Well, this is getting to be one of the largest deficits I think the city has faced. The city faced a deficit back in what they call the recession of about approximately 10 years ago. And, the problem is that some of the expenses are manageable and can be cut back, and some are just, the city is married to them. The city manager is having talks with the unions, but we really don't know how those conversations are going through, and whether there's going to be any relief offered by the unions that manage a great deal of the personnel.
Okay, and since you've been following this for some time, is there any comments that you have on the issues in play?
With regard to comments, I've listened to some of the conversations the city council members have had. One council member actually made a comment that maybe the city should just use all of their reserves. The problem with taking an all or nothing approach is, using all of the city reserves would possibly jeopardize the city's bond rating. So, that those are not necessarily the answer to go ahead and do stuff like that. It can't be a one size fits all approach.
Okay. And as we look down the road, of course, this pandemic is going to end and life is going to, move on in some other realm of normalcy, regardless of whether it's similar to the past or not. But the opportunity to generate further revenue into the future, do you think that's looking as good as it has in the past, or not as good?
Well, obviously, the thing that will fix all of this is getting people back to work. We have now gotten some kind of ideas as to how to do that safely. I think we're all going to be carrying around a mask for quite some time. I think gloves, taking temperatures, things of that nature to anticipate where someone may be may have the virus and they have to consolidate or quarantine. But the important thing is people do have to get back to work, because the only solution in the long term is going to be revenues produced by sales. You know, one of
And
the
I
other,
think tourism plays into that too, doesn't it?
it does, absolutely. Tourism is going to be a big part of that. But tourism, the tourism budget does not play into as much of the general fund. The general fund is primarily funded through property tax and sales tax.
Okay.
There are other areas that generate revenue, but fee income. But tourism obviously has flows over into sales tax as well. That
Okay.
is true.
Bob, do you have any sort of reference points for cities around the county or around the state? Because I'm sure everyone is bumping into this similar dilemmas.
Well, usually we keep a close eye on what's going on in the cities near us. We've been reading about what Oxnard is doing, and some other cities. Oxnard, of course, announced that they were going to go ahead and have everyone take a 10% cut in pay, at least from the management ranks. You know, like I say, it's very difficult to go ahead and do a one size fits all, because when people talk about a 10% cut, a 10% cut for someone who's making six figures is quite different from someone who's only making 40,000 a year. Even though it's a smaller dollar amount, it's a much bigger part of that household budget. So you have to be really cautious about just making a blanket statement or an option that is going to be, okay, we're just going to do this and that's all we're going to do. You know, the important thing, I think, is that the city needs to take an approach, which is, we've got 10 or 11 options here. We need to look at all of them. Don't take anything off the table. All of them need to be considered, and maybe a piece of each of them, including a portion of the reserves, should be taken into account.
Are there any options that VREG in particular would like to see emphasized?
Well, you know, there is one option. Well, first of all, you know, the city council has been spending time. For instance, we read that they spent a great deal of time recently managing the fee income part of it. And to have a city council spend time on things like, should we change it by 3% or $5? To me, just seems like a real waste of city council's time. I think the city manager is more than equipped to manage things like that. And I mean, that's why he was hired to do the job. I mean, he knows what works and what doesn't work. He's got experience from other cities. He's paid to make the big decisions. And, you know, we've got to give him leeway to make those things happen. I think the council needs to get back to doing policy decisions. And there are areas that the city can do more in the policy area to help our recovery.
All right, Bob, thank you kindly. So I'm going to wrap up here. Is there a website that viewers could go to for more information? And do you have a summating message for the viewers?
Yeah, we do have a website. It's VREG.Ventura.org. That's VREG, Ventura, no space, .org. And I think when I commented that the city council needs to be looking at what else they could be doing, the city council has other avenues in policy. For instance, they could be looking at spendable income in the way of making things better for the citizens in a major way, especially if they take on policy decisions with regard to water. Our water situation is going to possibly triple in expenses in the next few years if they don't take a different direction. And we know that there are ways that the city could probably save hundreds of millions of dollars if the council would take a different direction on solving the water problem.
All right, Bob. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, George.
This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.